I called the customer ignorant, petulant, and obtuse on a recorded line at my job. That call got reported. I got written up. And a week later, I just simply couldn't get out of bed. That's not where the story starts, but that's where it broke. Now let me back up. I can't point to one single thing that caused it. And people ask me that. They ask me, what was that moment? What was that single point that led you to all this? And honestly, there isn't one single point. It was work stress piled up on financial stress, piled up on feeling underemployed in a bad job market, feeling undervalued, not listened to. It was short bursts of hope when something looked like it might work out for me, and all of a sudden that crash when it didn't. Over and over again, weight on a board, one piece at a time. Specifically at work, it got to the point where there were people that I was training in my role, and I trained them to the point where, they should have been doing things right. They fell into some bad habits, and when it came down to a potential job change for me or position change further up the food chain in, say, a regulatory market, which is perfect directly into my wheelhouse, and that person gets hired over me. And when they were doing that job, their screw-ups came back to my desk, and I had to take care of it, and I had to cover that. And this happened continually. And people were like, well, Dave, he's Mr. Fix-It. He'll take care of this here. And that frustration kept building and kept building and kept building. The financial stresses, how am I going to pay my bills? I'm underemployed right now, not making as much as I should be right now. My wife is making more right now than me. Why can't I pull up my socks? Why can't I be a man? And all that kept piling on and piling on. Now, this whole time I kept telling myself, I got this. I'm a lone wolf. Just push the feelings aside, just keep going on. But here's what nobody around me saw. I was walking around like a kettle just under boiling. Someone cuts me off in traffic, boom, I explode. Road rage. Someone leaves a shopping cart in the middle of a parking lot, boom, I'd explode. I yell at them, telling them how inconsiderate they are, what an idiot, and things like that. I would just blow up. Even when someone just looked at me, was walking by, and I thought that they were looking at me strange, I'd turn around and say, like, what's your problem? And I would get into arguments like that all the time. And I didn't know why. All I knew was that I was angry all the time. But I didn't know why. People actually started pulling away from me. I got short with my wife, with things as simple as changing a schedule last minute or something changed. And I'd be like, great, you're not respecting my time or you're not respecting me overall. My kids would not clean up it would not clean up after themselves, and I would snap because there was something left around. Why am I always picking up after you guys? And I would blow up. And people kept pulling away from me. I genuinely could not understand why. I was like, what's their problem? Why is everybody doing this? What's going on? Why can't everyone just live up to my expectations while I'm living up to theirs? But I wasn't. You see, I just couldn't see it yet. Now, I worked in an escalation department, and I was the guy you got transferred to whenever you said, I need to speak to your manager. And so I would get the call, and, mostly I'd be called, different names, insults, sworn at time and time again because people didn't get their way. It was like water off a duck's back. Didn't bother me at all. Until one day it wasn't. And that day, that call there was a man who wanted an exception to a policy, a longstanding policy that we had. And the business had stated that policy, no exceptions whatsoever. Sorry, but there's no exceptions. So he called, asked for this exception, and I told him calmly, I'm sorry, no exceptions. He asked again and again and again and again, over and over and over again. And this was like a 25-minute to 30-minute call where I had answered him after 5 minutes. And he just kept going on and pushing and pushing and pushing until finally I broke. And I just said, that's enough. I called him a petulant child. I called him obtuse. I called him ignorant. Just in those passive aggressive, but these came out as real insults here. And it wasn't the first time either. It turned out that there'd been a pattern for over a couple months. Passive aggressive comments, things that I hadn't even noticed I was doing. Now I got called into a meeting. I sat down with my boss and a member from the HR team, and they played some of those calls. And I was shocked that I was hearing my voice on the other end saying some of these things. And I couldn't understand why. I didn't even remember part of those conversations. In fact, it got to the point where I was ready to accuse them of using HR or using AI to kind of screw me over. But it wasn't. It was me. And I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand what was going on. And through all that meeting, I got written up. And this was a week before I was supposed to go on vacation with my wife. I got written up. And that hit me hard because I'd never gotten written up like this before. And this was pretty serious. So now, a week later, like I said, I was supposed to go on vacation. So I had my holidays all booked, all planned. It was a 2-week holiday, 2-week vacation that I had planned with my wife. And a little bit before that, around that same time, my wife was told that she can't fly. Due to health reasons, she could not fly at that time. So it was a dream trip that we had planned together, and almost like a second honeymoon type thing. Actually, a honeymoon that we never really had because we got married with kids and all this other stuff. So we really had to had a vacation time alone together. And this was going to be it. And then she got told that that's it. You can't go, you can't fly. And those plans were shattered. So I was alone for the next 2 weeks. And she went back to work. She went to work because she's like, well, what's the sense of me being off? But I couldn't go back to work at that time because it was a mandatory vacation. Already planned, already in the books. So I was dealing with all this at home, alone. And that's when things went somewhere that I didn't expect and I couldn't have expected. Now, I'm not done with this story. I will finish it soon. My name is Dave, and I'm still standing.